The snow had started falling before sunrise, thick, heavy, unhurried. The world turned white, silent, almost sacred. On a morning like that, everyone stayed home. Everyone, except him. Julian Ray didn't take his 5 a.m. walks because he loved the cold. He hated it, actually. He walked because it was the only time of day when no one asked anything of him. No calls, no deals, no headlines. Billionaire, medical tech tycoon, owner of 7 companies and a loneliness he couldn't quite name. Julian could buy anything, except peace. But that morning, walking the icy trail of Ashford Park, something stopped him in his tracks. Beside a snow-covered bench, a small, tangled figure caught his eye. It was a girl, no older than 13. She was curled up tight, arms wrapped around 3 tiny bundles. Her face was pale, trembling. Her lashes were frosted with ice. One of the babies whimpered. Another gave a soft cough, weak, desperate, heartbreaking. Julian ran. He dropped to his knees in the snow, yanked off his coat without thinking, and started wrapping the babies first. Then he gently touched the girl's shoulder. "Hey, can you hear me?" She barely moved her head. Conscious, but fading. Her lips were purple. Her nose had bled. Her half-open eyes held more fear than any child should carry. Julian didn't hesitate. He called his driver. "West entrance. Bring blankets." When he hung up, he carefully pulled the girl into his arms. She was light, terrifyingly light. Like the cold had drained everything from her but the will to survive. The babies clung to his chest, as if they knew this time they weren't being left behind. He looked around the silent, frozen park. No one else had stopped. But he had. Before we continue this real story of heartbreak and healing, if this moment has already stirred something inside you, please subscribe to our channel until we mend. It helps us keep these stories alive, and gives us strength to bring more to light. Thank you for being here. The Rolls-Royce door opened, warm air clashing against the storm outside. Julian climbed in with all 4 of them cradled in his arms. The girl barely reacted, her head limp on his shoulder. The babies had stopped crying, never a good sign. The car sped through the icy streets of D.C. Julian stared at the 3 infants. 2 boys, 1 girl. He'd sat through billion-dollar negotiations without flinching. Bought out entire corporations with a nod. But this made his hands tremble. This cracked something open. He hadn't felt this kind of urgency since the night he lost his wife. As the iron gates to the Ray estate opened, the mansion emerged like a painting, glass and marble nestled in snow. Miriam, his longtime housekeeper, ran to meet him at the entrance. "Sir Julian, my lord. Who are these children? Prepare the guest room. Turn on the heating unit. Call Dr. Eliza Latimer. Now." Miriam didn't ask questions. She vanished. Julian laid the girl on the couch near the fireplace. Her face looked peaceful now, but much too still. The babies were gently placed on warmed blankets. He knelt beside them, watching one tiny hand twitch and curl in the air. Dr. Latimer arrived 20 minutes later. After a full assessment, she spoke carefully. "She's dangerously dehydrated, early hypothermia, and shows signs of long-term malnourishment. And Julian, she's just a child. A child with 3 newborns." He nodded, jaw tight. "And the babies? Miraculously alive. But underweight. They'll need round-the-clock care." Julian stared into the fire. No one is leaving them behind again. That night, the house didn't sleep. Julian stayed awake. He sat by the fireplace, watching the babies, 2 boys and a girl, sleep under blankets. Their breaths were small, soft, unsure. The girl hadn't woken up. But her face seemed calmer now, as if the warmth had given her permission to let go, just for a while. Julian stared at her. How had a 13-year-old survived with 3 newborns through a snowstorm? Where were her parents? Who did the babies belong to? He didn't know. But he knew one thing for sure. She wasn't in that park by accident. And he hadn't stopped by chance. This was something more. Something divine. The fire cracked softly beside the girl as dawn painted light across the frosted windows. Julian hadn't moved from the chair. He sat forward, elbows on his knees, studying her face. Her cheeks were less pale now. The tremble in her lips had stopped. Her fingers, once frozen stiff, twitched beneath the warm linen. Then her eyelids fluttered. He stood quickly. The girl blinked at the ceiling. Confused. Frightened. She looked to her side and immediately pushed herself up with weak arms. "The babies, where are they?" Her voice was raw, fragile, like it hadn't been used in days. Julian stepped forward, calm and slow. "They're okay," he said gently. "They're sleeping. Right there, by the fire." She turned her head and saw them bundled in. Warmth, breathing gently. Her shoulders dropped. She covered her face with her hands and let out a trembling breath. "They're safe now," Julian said again, kneeling beside her. "So are you." The girl looked at him with hesitation. Mistrust. But beneath it relief. Who are you?" she whispered. "My name is Julian," he replied. "I found you in the park. In the snow." She looked down at her lap. "I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was so tired. What's your name?" "Nia." She spoke it like a secret. He nodded slowly. "How old are you, Nia?" 13. "I turn 14 in May." Julian closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself. "And the babies?" "They're mine," she said quickly. "Not by birth. But they're mine." Hey, if this story has touched your heart even a little, consider subscribing to this channel until we mend. It helps more than you know. These stories matter, and so does your presence here. Thank you for listening. Julian pulled a chair closer and sat beside her. "Nia, can you tell me what happened?" She looked at the fire, eyes empty, like someone who had seen too much too soon. "Their names are Isaac, Layla, and Jordan," she said. "I found them at the shelter. Their mother left. One day she was there, the next she was gone." "Gone?" "She said she was going to find milk. Never came back." Julian's throat tightened. No one wanted them. Too loud. Too needy. Too much. She looked over at the sleeping babies. They cried all night. People yelled. Some threatened to call the system. "I knew what happens when the system takes you. I've been there." Her voice cracked. "I wasn't going to let them be thrown away. So, you took them." "I waited until night. Wrapped them in what I had. I walked until my feet bled. Thought maybe I could find someone. Or a hospital. But it got cold. I thought I'd rest just a second." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to sleep." Julian didn't interrupt. She continued, eyes glazed. "My mom died 2 years ago. Overdose. My aunt took me in, but her boyfriend." Her words stopped. "I ran." Julian felt the words like needles. "You've been surviving ever since." She nodded. "Taking care of those babies with nothing? They kept me going. Gave me a reason to wake up. Even if we didn't have food, I'd sing to them. If they smiled, I didn't feel like disappearing." Julian leaned back, overwhelmed. He had known suffering. But not like this. Later that afternoon, the babies woke with quiet cries. Julian helped her feed them. Bottles prepared by Miriam. The little girl, Layla, stared up at him with wide brown eyes. Julian smiled for the first time in days. Nia watched him. "You're good with them." He shrugged. "It's been a long time since I held a baby." "Were you a dad?" The question pierced deeper than expected. "Yes," he said softly. "I had a daughter." "What happened?" "She died. Car crash. She was only 8. Nia's lips parted, but she said nothing. They sat in silence. The fire crackled beside them. The babies cooed. And something old and frozen inside Julian began to thaw. That evening, Nia curled up on the guest bed, the babies beside her in a bassinet. Julian stood in the doorway, watching her tuck them in with a tenderness that shattered him. 13 years old, and more mother than many ever become. As he turned to walk away, Nia called out, "Julian!" He turned back. "Thank you for stopping." He didn't answer right away. Then, "Thank you for surviving." Julian couldn't sleep. Not because of the noise. The babies were calm now, breathing softly in the warm room beside Nia. But something else gnawed at his mind. A familiar name. A strange feeling in his chest. Earlier, while speaking with Nia, she'd mentioned something that stuck with him. Her mother's name, Alyssa Calder. It haunted him. That night, he went to his private office. Dusty boxes lined the shelves, old employee records from the foundation he'd started years ago, back when he still believed money could solve everything. He pulled one down. Then another. At 2:47 a.m., he found it. A file. Alyssa Calder hired 2011, medical assistant, single mother. And inside, a photo. Julian froze. It was her. He remembered now. A gentle nurse who once worked at a free clinic he funded on the city's south side. She was smart, steady, and brave. And she had saved his daughter once when a rare allergic reaction nearly took her life at school. Alyssa had been there. She'd administered the shot. She'd saved Isla. He had thanked her. Donated more supplies. Then life, as it always did, moved on. Now, years later, her daughter had ended up sleeping in his house. Starving. Forgotten. Julian sat down slowly, the weight of it all pressing on his chest like a verdict. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a circle. The next morning, Nia found him in the kitchen. She was wearing a clean sweater that Miriam had set out. The babies were resting in the nursery. Julian turned to her, a cup of tea in his hand. "I need to tell you something," he said, motioning for her to sit. She looked nervous. "I knew your mother." Nia froze. "She worked at a clinic I funded. She saved my daughter's life once years ago. I never forgot her face. I didn't connect the names until last night." Nia's eyes filled with tears. "She was amazing," Julian said softly, "and now here you are, her daughter, showing that same strength, that same fire." Nia wiped her face with her sleeve. "I wish she could see us now," she whispered. "She does," he said. A few days later, Julian stood by the nursery watching the babies sleep. The past had found him, yes, but so had something else, purpose. He went back to his office, drafted letters, called attorneys. That evening after dinner, he sat down with Nia. "I want to help you," he began, "not with charity, with family." She looked at him, confused. "I want to adopt the babies," he said, "not to take them from you, but to give you all a foundation, a future, and I want to become your legal guardian too." Nia's breath caught. "I don't want you to carry this weight alone anymore. You were forced to grow up too fast, but now I want you to have a chance to live, to breathe." Tears streamed down her face. "No one's ever wanted to keep me," she whispered, "only send me away." Julian took her hand. "You're not going anywhere." Weeks passed, court hearings, medical tests, psych evaluations, but Julian never flinched. He stood beside Nia every step of the way. And in the quiet spaces between, they laughed, they built routines, the babies gained weight, Nia started online classes, Julian began cooking again, badly, but with effort. One night, as they were folding laundry, Nia held up a wrinkled drawing the twins had scribbled. It was of a house, a big one, with 4 stick figures holding hands. In bold crayon letters it said, U.S. A month later it was official. Julian Ray became the legal guardian of Nia Calder and the adoptive father of Isaac, Layla, and Jordan. He didn't hold a press conference, didn't post about it online. This wasn't for show. It was for redemption. For Alyssa. For Isla. For a 13-year-old girl who had taught him what love without condition really looked like. And now to you, yes, you reading or listening right now, let us ask. What would you have done that snowy morning? Would you have stopped? Would you have seen her? Let this be your invitation not just to feel, but to act, to remember that not all heroes wear capes, some wear broken shoes, some wear frostbitten silence, and some are 13 years old carrying 3 lives in their arms. Snow still dusted the tops of the hedges along the driveway, but inside the Ray home there was warmth in places where cold used to live. Julian sat on the floor of the nursery with Jordan asleep against his chest, a small trail of drool on his sweater. He didn't move, not because he couldn't, but because he didn't want to. Layla was curled up on a fluffy rug beside him, babbling to a stuffed bear. Isaac tugged at a wooden toy piano, occasionally smashing a key like he was testing the acoustics of the room. And across the space, Nia. She was sitting on the window bench, knees pulled to her chest, reading a worn copy of A Wrinkle in Time, a gift from Miriam. The corners of her lips hinted at a smile she hadn't shown before. Julian didn't say anything, he just watched, observed how her shoulders weren't pulled so tight anymore, how she looked at the babies now, not with worry, but with calm, like she knew, truly knew, that for once they were safe. That she was safe. She caught him looking. What? He smiled. You're different. Nia tilted her head. Bad different. No, the kind of different that happens when someone starts believing again. She looked away quickly, but not before he saw it, her eyes welling. I still wake up scared sometimes, she admitted, like it's all going to disappear. He nodded slowly. I used to feel the same after Isla died. I'd wake up every day hoping I could forget, then feel guilty for even trying. Nia looked at him. Does it ever stop? The fear? Yeah. He thought about that for a long moment. No, he said honestly, but it softens, becomes something quieter, something you learn to walk beside instead of run from. That weekend Miriam decorated the house with small paper lanterns, not for a holiday, just because she thought the home needed color. Nia helped her string them across the archways. When Julian came home from a meeting, he found Nia standing on a step stool, mouth full of clothespins, hanging a string of tiny clothes near the fireplace. She turned and nearly fell, but he caught her instinctively. For a moment they both laughed. "I've got you," he said simply. And she believed him. The next morning something strange happened. Nia came down to the kitchen early. Julian was already there, flipping pancakes for the twins. "Mr. Julian?" He turned, spatula mid-air. "Just Julian." "Julian," she paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." She took a deep breath. "Why do you care?" "About us." He lowered the pan slowly and wiped his hands. "I've asked myself the same question." He looked out the window for a moment. "I used to think I had everything. But I didn't know how empty my life was until I saw you in that snow." She said nothing. He continued, voice low. "You didn't just need me, Nia. I needed you. I just didn't realize it yet." She sat down slowly. He added, "When I lost Isla, I thought I'd buried the part of me that could love again. But then you showed up. With nothing but courage and 3 babies in your arms. And you reminded me that broken things still have worth. Especially broken hearts." Nia lowered her eyes. "I don't know what to say to that," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything. Just be here. That's all I've ever needed." That afternoon, Nia walked through the garden behind the estate. Spring was hinting through the snow, tiny green shoots peeking through the frost. She bent down and gently touched a bud with her finger. Everything inside her still felt fragile. But like that flower, something was pushing its way up. Something alive. Suddenly, she noticed a plaque near the bench at the far edge of the yard. She hadn't seen it before. She walked over and knelt to read it. "Isla Rose Ray, may we love as bravely as she did." Nia sat down on the bench slowly, fingers brushing over the engraved metal. So this was her. Julian's daughter. Gone, and yet still here. A single tear fell from Nia's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She let it be. Some things didn't need to be hidden. From the distance, she heard laughter. Julian playing with the babies inside. And for the first time, she whispered something she hadn't dared say aloud. I think she would have liked us. That night, Nia had a dream. She was in the park again. Only this time, it wasn't snowing. The trees were in bloom. And her arms were empty. She turned in panic. No babies. Then a hand touched her shoulder. She turned. It was Alyssa, her mother. Younger than Nia remembered. Healthier. Smiling. Radiant. You did good, she said softly. Nia opened her mouth, but no words came. Her mother just touched her face gently. They're okay now, Alyssa whispered. And so are you. When Nia woke, her cheeks were wet with tears. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. In the following weeks, the house continued to grow, not in size, but in meaning. There were dance parties in the kitchen with the babies squealing. Movie nights with popcorn everywhere. Homework sprawled across the living room. And music, always music. Julian had ordered a new piano. He took lessons just to play lullabies again. One night, Nia passed by his study and found him playing the same melody over and over, missing every third note. She smiled. Then stepped in quietly. Move over, she said. He raised an eyebrow. You play? Kind of. He scooted. She sat beside him and placed her fingers gently on the keys. Together, they played something new. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Later, as the house slept, Julian stood once more by the nursery door, watching. 3 babies in one crib. Nia in the bed nearby, sprawled sideways with a book fallen over her chest. He took a breath. The kind of breath you take when the past finally loosens its grip. He didn't need the city anymore. Or the applause. Or the power. This was enough. He stepped into the room, kissed each baby's forehead, and pulled the blanket over Nia's shoulder. As he turned to leave, she stirred. Julian. He stopped. Thank you, she mumbled, barely awake. For choosing us. He looked back at her. No, he whispered. Thank you, for finding me. Then he closed the door. And for the first time in years, he slept without ghosts. It started with a door. Just a door. Plain, white, quiet. But to Nia, it had always meant something else. At the shelter, doors meant uncertainty. At every foster home, doors meant silence, distance, or danger. Some slammed. Some locked. Most never knocked. But one evening, as the spring wind rustled the curtains in her new room, Nia heard a soft knock. Julian's voice followed. Hey, can I come in? She blinked, startled. No one had ever asked that before. Not like that. Not so gently. Yes. He entered carrying 2 mugs of cocoa and something wrapped in an old cloth. You okay? He asked. Nia shrugged. Just thinking. He sat beside her on the bed, handed her one of the mugs. It smelled like cinnamon and home. After a quiet sip, she asked, Why are you always so careful around me? Julian glanced at her, then away. Because I know what it feels like to be broken. And I know that rushing people to heal only makes the cracks deeper. She nodded slowly, digesting his words. Then he unfolded the... Inside was a photo. Slightly bent at the edges. A girl maybe 8 years old smiling at the edge of a lake. She had braids and wore a red scarf. Isla? Nia asked softly. Julian nodded. I used to think I lost her completely. But now I think, maybe I just had to learn how to carry her differently. He handed the photo to Nia. Sometimes, We honor people best by continuing the love they gave us. Passing it on. Nia's hands trembled a little. Do you think she would have liked me? She would have adored you, Julian said instantly. She always looked out for kids at school who felt left out. She had that radar like you. They sat in silence again. Not awkward. Sacred. And somewhere in that quiet, Nia began to believe just maybe this wasn't temporary. The next morning, Nia woke early. The babies were still asleep, curled like commas in their crib. But she wasn't tired. For the first time in forever, she felt the pull to do something not for survival, but just for joy. She crept downstairs barefoot and found herself in the library. Books lined every wall like quiet, patient sentinels. She ran her finger along the spines. Dickens, Baldwin, Angelou. A whole world of people who had suffered, lost, fought, and still spoken beauty into the world. She picked one randomly, Letters to a Young Poet. As she sat on the couch and opened the book, a folded note fell out. She unfolded it. Be gentle with yourself. You're still becoming. She stared at it. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't know if Julian had written it, or Miriam, or if it had just been waiting there, all this time, like a whisper from the universe. But it was exactly what she needed. A week later, Nia asked for something that surprised everyone. Can I go to school? Julian almost dropped the spoon he was using to feed Jordan. Are you sure? She nodded. I miss learning. And I don't want to feel scared of people anymore. Julian smiled. Then we'll find a school that sees you. She paused. Can you come with me on the first day? His chest tightened. Of course I can. So they enrolled her in a small private school just outside the city, one that specialized in trauma-sensitive teaching. No uniforms. Small class sizes. Counselors who actually listened. On her first day, Nia wore the scarf Isla had worn in the lake photo. It was too big for her, but she didn't care. As they walked to the car, Julian handed her a note of his own. She opened it once she sat down in the passenger seat. You are allowed to be scared. Just don't let it stop you. I'll be here after the bell rings. She clutched it like armor. At school, things didn't start perfectly. She froze when the teacher asked her to introduce herself. She panicked during lunch when the cafeteria got too loud. But when she walked out that afternoon, there he was, waiting beside the car with a smile and a milkshake. How'd it go? He asked. I didn't run, she said. That's more than enough, he said, handing her the milkshake. That evening, while Julian was folding laundry in the living room, Nia approached him with a quiet energy. Can I ask something weird? He looked up, amused. You can ask anything. Weird is welcome here. She sat on the edge of the armchair. Would it be okay if I called you something other than Julian? Not all the time. Just sometimes. His heart caught in his throat. He set the shirt in his lap. What were you thinking? She bit her lip. Maybe, Pops. Julian blinked slowly, as if the moment was too fragile to move through too fast. Pops, he repeated. She looked embarrassed now. I mean, if it's too much. It's not, he cut in gently. It's everything. She smiled softly. Okay, Pops. And with that, the room became something it had never been before. Later that week, a surprise arrived in the mail. A letter from the court. The final paperwork had been approved. It was official. Julian was now, in every legal sense, Nia's guardian. But titles felt too small now. Too flat. What they had couldn't be boxed into documents. Still, they celebrated. Miriam cooked her famous stew. The babies wore matching onesies. And Nia made her first toast. Standing awkwardly in front of the dinner table, she held up a glass of sparkling juice and said, To anyone who's ever been thrown away, may they find someone who sees their worth and refuses to let go. Julian clinked his glass with hers, eyes misty. To be coming, he added. After the celebration, as everyone drifted into sleep, Nia found herself once again in the garden. The stars stretched above her like stories waiting to be written. She closed her eyes and whispered softly, "I'm still scared sometimes, Mom. But I think I'm going to be okay." There was no answer. Only wind. Only silence. Only peace. And that was enough.